the Cold War and the consequence of the way things ended in 1945, oddly enough, and we'll see this in a couple of other places as well, some remarkable similarities to things that happened after World War I. And that we see a second Red Scare. You probably remember that from the 1920s. What was going on in the Red Scare? What were people scared of? Communism. The exact same thing happens. We have this exact same massive fear and heightened hysteria over communism. We talked already many times about how the United States had historically, been very hostile and very nervous and suspicious of communism and other kinds of extreme ideology similar to it. But the Korean War, the sort of solidification, the congealing of the Cold War, as we have seen, ignited just an all-new fear of communism, a fear that communists were infiltrating American society, that there were spies everywhere, that the Soviets were here, there, and they were, surveillance. They were using surveillance. This big fear of spies, of conspiracy, and that leads to another major anti-communist crusade throughout the United States that violated civil liberties of many people and ruined a lot of people's lives, if not, violating their free speech, but really ruining some people's careers, getting blacklisted and associated with communism, and it kind of destroys a lot of people's futures because of that. So we see this second mass hysteria over communism, and the government investigating accusations of communism, and it just gets really out of hand and kind of crazy. One of the ways in which they did that, there was a commission created in Congress called the House Un-American Activities Commission, which is usually just referred to as the HUAC because that is a big mouthful to say. But and they had been around before, actually before World War II even, so it wasn't a new thing. But they all of a sudden are, very active and getting lots of attention as a result of this Red Scare. And it was their job to investigate and to probe supposed communist infiltration of the government, to question people and to look into, investigate all these accusations, which were coming from all over the place. So they were going through, thousands of government employees and questioning them and asking them all questions about their background and who they had been associated with and if they were ever members of the Communist Party, all that kind of business. So all kinds of really heavy background checks, really, thorough information. Millions of people were examined and questioned by the HUAC, tons of evidence gone over. Very, very few people were ever dismissed because of something questionable. They never produced any too many major issues, but it was a big, massive undertaking and just a demonstration of that paranoia that we have to search everybody, we got to question everybody, and ask all these kinds of, it just really creates this super climate of super suspicion throughout the United States, even though they were mostly, I'm going to put both of these up here together because you don't need to know specifically. They're just, it's a general example. But anyway, finishing what I was saying, it just adds to that climate of suspicion, although they were looking at government employees. Now, to further add to that suspicion, I said that they investigated thousands of people and they didn't turn up too much actual stuff. However, there were some, not very many, but there were some high-profile cases of supposed spying in the United States by Americans in this period, which further adds to that climate of suspicion and further makes people, worried and scared and certain that there were spies somewhere and there are spies everywhere. Both of these were two of the high-profile spy cases of the time, Alger Hiss and Julius Ethel Rosenberg. Both of them accused of spying, of sending information to the Soviets. Alger Hiss, they couldn't get him on the spy charge because the statute of limitations had expired by the time that they investigated it, but he did go to jail for lying to Congress about it. Julius and Ethel Rosenberg, probably the most high-profile case and one of the more controversial cases, a married couple that were accused of selling atomic secrets to the Soviets. That he had information about the Manhattan Project and then passed that information along. they were found guilty and they were executed. It is one of not only the more high-profile cases, but one of the last and maybe one of the first, I can't quite remember, situations where American-born citizens were executed for treason, for espionage. And it was controversial then, as it remains now, as to whether or not they actually were spies. Documents that, we know more now, actually, since the Soviet Union fell apart and, we got kind of their side of it. Most evidence seems to indicate that Alger Hiss and Julius Rosenberg were spying for the Soviet Union. It is questionable whether or not Ethel Rosenberg was, or she knew about it. But all of those things just add to that climate of suspicion and fear and worry about communism. And so it turns into a big witch hunt. And we will finish that part of it up tomorrow, but I want to stop there today. So not too much left. So questions on that much. And we're going to wrap that part up tomorrow with McCarthyism.